Hey, what's up? It's Peter here in Budapest in Hungary at the Citadel, and today what I want to be talking to you about is shooting only what you need. So really economical, airtight shot list, airtight storyboard, having such beautiful shots, such shots which emote with the audience. Not just beautiful, that's beautiful, but does it emote? Does it bring out anything? And will a marriage of audio and visuals actually benefit the film by having that in it? And if you shoot it, are you going to use it? Perhaps you don't always know, but maybe in the context of a cut you'll know, but here you don't. So maybe go for it. If you think it is worth it, don't always just back down. Don't be that vigilant, even though I'm saying be vigilant. Yeah, let's jump right in.
Take a look at the low man beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know who's in the best-selling show. Is their life on Mars?
Are you shooting too much coverage? Are you shooting shots which are garbage collecting? Are you wasting your actor's time, wasting your crew's time, doing too much storyboard? You don't even have a handle on what kind of scene you want to tell, what kind of, how you're going to treat the scene in the script, the dialogue, how you're going to treat that. Some of this is, you don't have to treat it. You don't have to have a plan for everything, sure. But it does help to know how you're going to do the scene in your head. It has to be somehow free in a way whilst also being planned. As I've mentioned, the great art comes from inspiration and structure. Having both of these ideas going on, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something that you're confident that you're able to do, but not a kind of false confidence either. You should really be, very aware of the dynamic that's going on in that scene and what is important to get across in that scene. What else you can get from it, perhaps, as well, in terms of the truth of character in those scenes. If you have a scene with 40 shots, that's 40 setups, 40 times that you're moving the camera and tripod, wasting time, the sound man's wasting time, the cameraman's wasting time, and no, they're not technically wasting time, they're doing their job, and everything seems like it's going according to plan. But what if you only needed to get that in one shot? Those 40 shots in one shot, you could have gotten it. It would have been much more effective. You're working smart, not necessarily hard. And that is the point. So what is very important to do is to look at your storyboard and think, can I make a film? A lot like Richard Linklater's first film, it's impossible to learn to plow by reading books, not Slacker. Although Slacker does have elements of it, it's impossible to learn to plow by reading books. But can you make a film that's structured based on one wide shot per location and get information across, information release in those shots from a kind of, poetry of day-to-day life standing point, and in that way it's then showing character. If you've got a character on screen, which you should be doing, a few statics, even in Koyaanisqatsi do you see some kind of difference in and people on screen or camera move to indicate character a lot of the time, because you're never just shooting nothing. Can you structure a film with all of those wide shots, one after the other, in your storyboard, look back, and then actually try and shoot it, maybe, to try and because you'll probably find that that's a great film idea that you've come up with there. But did they have to be... You'll probably find that afterwards that all the wides, they don't actually add up to a particularly ambitious film. Although they were ambitious in the amount of locations you probably had, amount of different ideas that were going on, the one after the other, you can cover a lot of ground a lot of time. But you're not really using cinematic language to its full extent, but it is a good idea to experiment, because what they don't tell you is that you need to experiment with different styles yourself. Just because you've seen it in a Kubrick film, just because you've seen it in a Wong Kar-wai film or a Werner Herzog film, Yasuhiro Ozu film, doesn't mean that you will just inherently understand that when it comes to being on set and writing your storyboards, writing your scripts. You're not going to understand it. You could rewrite a script. You could rewrite Dazed and Confused. You're not going to understand every process that went into making it. So you need to experiment by making these films, if that's what you're interested in. If it's not, maybe you enjoyed a few techniques that went on in those films and you can apply them elsewhere in your films. Just use only what you need. Take from everything only what you need. Try one setup, one character action in a wide shot perhaps. Done. Next shot. What are you telling now? What kind of story are you telling in that next shot? Are you telling a story in every single shot, or at least having an information release in every single shot which is of some kind of relevance? And no, it doesn't have to be obvious, an information release. As long as you're aware of what the information release is, you've effectively conveyed it in that shot, or you've discovered it from the footage that you've found so that you can edit it together like a documentary. As long as you were purposeful and decisive when shooting with a camera out in the streets perhaps, and you weren't just garbage collecting, you were getting the shots that you actually needed to get, and then you can look back at it later and maybe it doesn't work the way that you wanted, but you discovered something new in that process. This is the beauty of what we're doing, this kind of monster that you're creating, this Frankenstein monster, and you're going off on the wrong foot if you want to get everything exactly how you imagined it in your storyboards, and it's not going to be right if you don't get that, or if maybe you've got one or two things that are a bit different. I think you've really failed if you've done that, because it needs to be a level above and a level above again by the end. You need to go a level above in the script writing so that you're constantly kind of reinventing yourself as an artist throughout the process, all the time, taking only what you need from that first evolution to who you are now, and then only what you need to the next stage in production with the actors perhaps in rehearsal, and then from rehearsal taking only what you need, what was vital, all the way to editing, where you're only editing what you actually need to tell the scene, and there you've got a film. Let's talk about sound. You also need only what you need with sound throughout a scene. You don't need everything from the clicks to the clacks to the background noise, everything that I'm going to add in here in post underneath my voice. You only need something which will go between your words to create that tension, or to have an atmospheric sound going off which will be effective in some way towards the type of scene that you're trying to make. This is only what you need, and it is so much more effective to have silence than it is to have so many sounds going on. The same is true of visuals as well. It is effective to have only a few shots where you've got that third image actually going on, because that third image, it gets so diluted the more shots that you have in a scene. It's not always true, because obviously if you've constructed a scene perfectly, you've got the third image, it does exist between every shot, sure. But if you take maybe a film which has 1,000 shots, like Gladiator or something, in a scene, or the Bourne films, I love the Bourne films, but there's certainly a lot of shots going on, and in between those shots there is that third image, and is that what you wanted to tell? Well, I think that a lot of people a lot of people, especially on our level, construct these scenes and they're not thinking about that third image. They're not thinking about what the move from one shot to the other actually tells us, or they don't experience that until the very end, and then they just accept it because it will be too much like hard work to go back, right? Or in the script, there's so much dialogue, you just kind of accept all of it for what it is in a scene, because, you know, if you can't have all of it, you might as well have none of it. Well, it's probably more preferable to have none of it, or just have a scene of a fucking dog, than it is to have a scene of a guy talking dialogue to another actor for a few minutes. Because one is more truthful than the other. One is going to give you some, you know, the dog is going to give you relevance, you know, and something to enjoy. Whereas the two people are going to be unprepared because you're unprepared going into the scene with them, because, you know, unless you've studied that scene in and out, like before midnight, and you know exactly the cues on every single line of dialogue, even then it can be over rehearsed. It is a nightmare sometimes. Make it easy for yourself on your first film, perhaps. I'm not telling you to write a different story. I'm telling you that if you haven't got the truth, you probably failed. Did you compromise? Is there something in your shot that shouldn't be? Is there something in your sound that shouldn't be? Or is your actor going off on their own whirlwind that they're not on the same page as you are? If so, did you compromise in the casting, or compromise in the way that you spoke to them because maybe you gave up at some stage? It happens to us all. We all kind of become lackadaisical, let's say, in, you know, which means kind of like relaxed, in the way that we approach different scenes, different processes. Especially editing with me, it becomes something which is so important, but you become so kind of like, oh, just let it be attitude, when in fact every shot, every frame matters, so you use only what you need. In a scene, how many shots do you need to tell the story in that scene, whatever that story is in that scene, whether it's a character analysis, the character comes to a conclusion or something, you know, some kind of psychological revelation is unveiled in that scene. How many shots do you need to tell that? Maybe just the one. Maybe it doesn't even need to move. Maybe it's a wide so we get as much information as possible and we're letting the atmosphere in at the same time, so we're expanding content. This is a great way to do it. It's very simple, effective way to do it. You can go tight, close up for an entire scene and have it on the actor's face, maybe. That's another really effective way to do it, Sergio Leone style. I think a good example and metaphor is this. If you've got a shot of a single object moving in the frame, maybe it's one person crossing left to right in a frame, that is a true example of only what you need. Let's say it's a static tripod. You don't need it moving. You don't need some kind of fancy camera move and some kind of fancy angle, or, you know, let's say, for example, you're speaking from character. You don't need maybe double the content, i.e. coming up with a second story in sound, although that is a great way to do it. And you don't need 50 actors crossing the screen or want extras in the background. Why? Just because you need that one person crossing left to right in the frame, and that says something. What does it say? Where do you cut it? At the beginning? At the end? How fast was he going in terms of the blocking? Did you direct him that way? Is it something which you didn't care about? Is that, you know, important to you? But more so, you've captured only there what you need to tell whatever story you were going to tell. And now it's changed, because no matter how you direct this scene, it will have changed in the process. So now you've got to put it together with all the other clips and go, damn, this wasn't what I wanted, but I've got to make a film out of it.